Hey everybody, so we're back. Tonight we're going to talk about gold and copper and rare earth elements in Illinois. And something kind of unfortunate but unusual about Illinois and its relationship to gold. A lot of you have kind of hinted at it, and I'm going to talk about it in detail tonight. It's going to be a fast one because there's a good story and a bad story here. So let's talk about gold and copper in Illinois. Let's make sure you guys are hearing me. After last night's interesting political debacle, I wanted to make sure that everything's going okay here. Yep, okay, we're live and we got people on. 3 comments. All right, guys. There we go. Okay, I can hear you. Hi, Charles. CJ, welcome. All right, we're getting everybody on board. Loud and clear. CJ says sound is good. All right, awesome. Charles, thanks. Okay, let's go on to the subject of the night, gold in Illinois. I'm going to turn the volume down here. I will keep an eye on the comments. If you've got further questions, this might be a good session for me to just kind of go through this very quickly and get back to your Q&A part, and we'll just split that in the middle. We won't break up the show. We'll just kind of connect it. Try to make it connected to Illinois and or the adjoining states, because they all kind of share this relationship we hinted at earlier when we were up looking at Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota. You know, we have all these glaciers, okay? So you get this kind of, what's that got to do with it? And the answer is the Great Lakes, okay? That's a residue of a glacier, of massive glaciation, and it moved through this area. And Illinois appears to have taken the brunt of it, or they just don't record stuff well. But what you're going to see is kind of an interesting story. So let's hop to it. So when I zoom in and I ask, okay, USGS, tell me, what gold can I find in Illinois? Well, I can find one source. And that one source happens to be in downtown Chicago, right here. I'm clicking on the wrong thing. There we go. And so right there in downtown Chicago is the Simmons Precious Metals Factory. I mean, we can go zooming right down to the street. You can go visit this place, I'm sure. They'd be happy to talk to you. Not. So they handle ruthenium, gold, iridium, palladium, platinum, and silver, and gallium. So it's a precious metal processing plant. Probably goes back to the turn of the century. A lot of the stuff in Chicago and New York, did that. In fact, a lot of the ore and stuff that moved east from the California gold fields got processed in New York and then sent back out west, as precious metals in coin form. Either direction, they had massive losses because of storms and hurricanes and whatnot off of Florida and the Caribbean, and pirates and all that kind of stuff. History, right? So here we have a piece of it. We have somebody who's got a processing facility here, the Simmons Precious Metals Refinery in downtown Chicago, and that is the one and only gold source in the USGS for Illinois. Does that mean you can't find gold anywhere in Illinois? Not really. So let's take a look at what that means. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to try to. My mouse is kind of running overtime to make this kind of a zoom because we're moving out into space. So 2 other things we talked about finding gold associated with. Well, we talked about a bunch of metals, but interestingly enough, I tried a bunch of them, and the only one I could find really kind of distinctive was this Aaron mound here, which is a copper occurrence. Don't even know what its background is. Let's take a look real quick. Bureau of Mines, 1995, spatial data extracted from the Minerals Availability System. So 1995 record, relatively new. Don't know what it's got to do with price of bananas, but they found some copper there. Now, what does that mean? Well, remember when we were back looking at Wisconsin, and we haven't looked in Iowa yet, but we looked in Minneapolis, and on over, up into the northern peninsula. Right through here, we saw copper coming through pretty strong. Well, guess what? Here's the copper. Right in this area, we saw copper and then sometimes gold. That's just an occurrence of copper here. But it does tend to say that there isn't much copper in Illinois, and it also says, based on the shape of things, any glaciation probably would have come down through here and scrubbed southward and would have moved any gold or anything like that. You know, one, it would have disseminated it broadly, and two, it would have pulverized it like crazy. But one other opportunity does exist, and people do find it. And I'll go into that in a second. Before I do, one other thing that I did catch when I was just bopping through all the different things that are available was this Higgs dome, which is kind of interesting. We talked about this in the past, that rare earth elements tend to also associate with gold. It's one of those things, and thorium and uranium and things like that. Those heavy metals tend to hang together. And so here we go, a Higgs dome deposit. It's fluorine, fluorite, beryllium, niobium, columbium, rare earth elements, and thorium. So it's got a bunch of interesting salts all mixed together in this deposit here called the Higgs dome deposit. In southeast Illinois. Go figure. Now I know down in this region is a bunch of extensions of the various coal mines and coal beds, and so some of this could be related to that kind of sedimentary and then metamorphic and who knows what. But it is an interesting find nonetheless that they have this here. I didn't look to see, just for grins. Let's do it real quick because we're going to go through this fast. And so it says Bureau of Mines, 1995. Here we go. Data extracted, a bunch of stuff. 1938, 1979. Trace significance of unusual mineral occurrences at the Higgs Dome, Hardin County, Illinois. So this dome has something about barite and statistical summary. So and the thorium. So thorium has another interesting potential as a quote green nuclear energy source, whatever that means. Everything's green these days. It isn't energy. But because it actually has a self-mediating nuclear fuel system that can be designed, thorium salts in molten form can actually be fairly safe as nuclear explosions go. But it is also something that they've looked into more recently as a potential energy source. If you're going to go green, you got to go nuclear. That's just if you're going to go completely green, you're going to have to go into this nuclear thing because there isn't enough land and enough open space, and there aren't enough birds to throw at fan blades when you're talking wind power. So sooner or later this whole thing's going to come to a shuddering realization that there's balances in every single source of energy. Energy itself is an interesting field. I'm into that big time. And so when you look at energy and you look at what's possible, it's always a risk mitigation. That means a fancy word for a risk-taking balancing act, where I'm going to take a certain amount of risk, but we might have some people die or some animals die or lose a scenic view in the process. And that's just the way it is. Even if you choose not to do that, you might have people die of starvation. That's the balancing act. You don't have any choice not to have a choice. That's the real truth of the modern world, and especially when it comes to green energy technologies like photovoltaics and electric cars and wind energy and solar energy and hydropower even, which I'm involved in, and in that kind of stuff. So you kind of get into this, wow, how do you balance these things? And the answer is carefully. And with science, not politics. And that's where things get really muddy. So back off of the soapbox and back onto the topic. So let's go back to Google Earth. What I wanted to show you for tonight is that, obviously we've got a problem when it comes to locating gold in Illinois, or for that matter, a lot of the states around it, because they all share a common theme. And that is, once you get up past that section of Missouri that I was talking about the other night. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click this on. You can see these were the diggings in the bottom corner of Missouri we talked about the other night. Notice the trend line. There seems to be a whole bunch of them right here, and then they stop at the Illinois border. I doubt that. I mean, it's possible because this is going right along the Mississippi River. You can see it meandering down here, a big windy thing. And so that becomes an interesting possibility, but reality is, geologically speaking, geology doesn't know much about rivers until after the fact. And so if there's gold here and there's rare earths over here, somewhere in this vicinity, and I'm just going to draw a big old circle, somewhere in this area is going to be some interesting stuff for a gold hunter. I can't say where, and I'm not going to. But it is worthy of note that these guys predict something over here causatively. They suggest it. They don't say there is. It's like an investment. You know, past performance is no predictor of future yield. You just don't get that. But it is an interesting side. So now let's go look at what I was going to point out to you. I'm going to turn off the gold in St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm going to go over here to look at what we have. And I'm going to turn on something different. I talked to you guys a while back that if you're looking at glaciation and its effect on these areas, one thing you can use as a harbinger of gold or an indicator is gravel, specifically gravel that's scrubbed into pits. Because under those gravel pits, that's an overburden. That could be a protective layer from all of that overlying burden that was going through there when there was glaciers that's scrubbing the land flat. And so when you have that, I decided to show all the gravel and sand quarries, boom, in blue here. And that gives you an idea that all the hope isn't lost, but it's pretty close to it. There are a lot of pits, but there are some interesting ones down in this area, sand and gravel, okay, a dredge. So for construction. And so these areas become an interesting prospect, if you will. Certainly for looking for fine gold in the sands, but down underneath the gravels on bedrock, that's the key. So if it's scrubbed down and it's going down on top of some sedimentary soils that are deeper than, then that's not fair. You're not going to find, those aren't going to be where the glaciers scrubbed clean. They would scrub to bedrock like a bandsaw. And so that's the thing you're looking for here. So, these are all potential gravel pits that have that possibility of yielding some gold at the bottom. They're using them for gravel and construction. We pull up just one record here, and it just says it's a Geological Survey 1981, okay. And so there's some gravel being found here in a pit. Some of that will be gravel from river-borne deposits, and that will be kind of uninteresting, mostly flour gold. Some of it might be pits that actually are dug into bedrock, in which case that's an interesting area. And that's the lesson for tonight for Illinois. Yeah, otherwise, it's going to be tricky digging and a lot of flour gold looking. There should be gold throughout the state in the form of fine flour, but it's going to be super ultra fine. Black sands will be the indicator for that. So if you're sifting out black sands, then go deep as you can, preferably to bedrock if you can. And that should be trapping out some small particles of gold, if not black sands that are enriched in gold. And for some of you, if you find black sands that actually have a rich portion of gold trapped into the sand itself, it can be worth doing the processing, extra stages of grinding and processing those sands and roasting them out, or whatever process you prefer to use to bring out the gold from those black sands. That's another way of yielding gold in an area like this. But that's it for tonight for Illinois. I just thought I'd make a quick dash over this situation and take a look at one way to look at areas that have had glaciation is just simply look for gravel pits, dimples or swales in the concreted bedrock or concreted soils. It could be calcareous kind of soils, limestones, things like that are either metamorphic, that kind of stuff. But they have a dip in them where they would trap, or cracks, fissures that would trap out the gold. And that's what you're going to be looking for. So that's kind of it. Let's check your questions. Super fine dust, Bob Sheasley says. But it is there, and that is true. And in fact, don't underestimate fine gold. You typically only get paid about 20%, not 20%, about 80% of spot at most, based on where you pulled that fine gold from. So the people who will have to do the refining have to refine it further. That costs money, so they deduct that from your price, okay? Not to mention the fact that if the gold comes from an area where it's not really that pure, maybe only 40% pure, they're going to deduct accordingly. Just expect that. But the fact of the matter is that most gold recovered is of the nature of fine gold. And so when you look at the volume, total volume in an area that has a lot of yield, it could be very valuable to pull out just fine gold. But it's tricky. It's as tricky as all get out, and you have to adjust everything to make it work. Just keep that in mind, though. When you're thinking fine gold, don't think, well, nah, I don't want that. No, think gold is gold. Yes. Now, the reason nuggets can pick up over spot when they approach, when they start heading toward an ounce, is simply because collectors will pay more on demand. And the more rare a nugget, I posted that one the other day, 2 point something kilograms, okay, in Australia. And I had people kind of dissing that wasn't a very big nugget. That's a huge nugget. And the statement was made that, gee, well, that's over spot. That's not right. And the answer is no, it is right. A 1 carat diamond is as rare as a 1 ounce gold nugget. Nuggets are rare. They don't come everywhere. That's why the fine gold is important. Keep your eye on where things are and make as much money as you can, or as much fun as you can while you can, digging up whatever gold there is. If you find nuggets, it's great. If you find monster nuggets, that's really rare. Good for you. But the fact is that, it's tricky to find that kind of stuff, and you'll be looking for it for a while before you find one. That particular nugget was a find of a lifetime, literally. And so, it's going to be one of those things where when you find one of those, you probably want to hang on to it unless it's really big. And then you want to be very, very judicious on who you sell it to for how much, because there are people who have zoomed in by Learjet to take gold out of Australia. I can remember a certain place, and it's on display here in Nevada, and bought that thing for a really, really decent low cost relative to what it was worth, because the person who had the nugget didn't realize, the bidders that would come in and didn't realize really what the nugget would be worth. So whatever you do, when you get a bigger nugget, don't go for spot. Get some second opinions. Get some people who know what they're talking about to give you some idea what it's worth. And that would be people who sold nuggets before, or collectors of nuggets. Those guys are going to know what it's worth. They may not tell you because they may want to get you to sell it to them cheap. But when you get a casino coming in, it's a whole nother ball game, because their idea is, profit. And they just want it as a billboard. So any price will do. So anyway, I just thought I'd touch on that. Let's see where we are here. Duke, Kansas, says CJ. Okay, we'll be coming up on Kansas shortly. Let's see. Alan Craven says, we found gold in central Illinois in the gravel pits. See, there you go. So again, these gravel pits are the key to Illinois. And of course, just like any other claim, permissions are the key to the gravel pit. So make sure you have access permissions and that you do the right things by whoever it is in terms of safety and all that stuff. Gravel pits can be a pretty serious danger, especially if there's heavy equipment in the vicinity. But at the same time, if you could get a dredge popped into one of their lakes after a heavy flood, that would be awesome, because you'd probably pull up some pretty good gold, fine or otherwise. Bob Sheezy says, gravel bars south of Rock Island County, and so forth. So check the comments below. We're getting some great stuff from you guys. And put your comments in. Where do you find gold in Illinois? And do you have any clubs and places that people could go and join you? Let them know. Just give them some contact information. I prefer, I think you would prefer that you not put your phone number on Facebook, because that, you're going to end up every spammer's mother's uncle calling you, offering you free insurance for a fee, or my latest one was a $500,000 loan. Would you like that? It's sign up here. So so glacial area, yes, Charles, and yeah, he's from McHenry County. So this whole area has been scoured by glaciers, and that's just the nature of that whole Midwest area. It's part of what makes it a fantastic area for all kinds of Great Plains wheat and all that stuff. But at the same time, it creates a huge bunch of havoc for you guys when you're going to look for gold. So I think that's it for tonight. Good talking with you guys. William Noble, was the Australian nugget 2.5 kilograms? Yes, that's right, 2.5, which is 2.2 pounds per kilogram. Now there's 12 ounces, 12 troy ounces to a pound of gold. It's different metrics than avoirdupois, which is 16 ounces per pound. So just be aware of that. There's a great, I'll tell you sometime, there's a riddle on that one, but. So Steve in Wisconsin, last night you said Hawaii has no gold. How come? Everything about what's in the mantle below and how it comes out. And in the case of the central ridge in the Pacific, it's all ultramafic basaltic material. So we're talking about peridotite and lava flows with lava and pohoioi is another name for another kind of lava, and those basically form some very rich iron material, but they are depleted in the gold. They're depleted in concentrations of quartz specifically, which would enrich with gold from those surrounding magmas. The problem is there's nothing really to enrich them there. And so you don't have any concentrated zones of gold. You might have gold disseminated through all the islands, but it's like, parts per trillion. It's not enough to be worth even looking for other than making a spectrograph. So that's the nature of the beast. Yeah, that's why I mentioned that about Hawaii. It's zero, and for a reason. The gold there is the sunsets and the beaches and the really expensive hotels. So if you want to own one of those, you can make a lot of money. So that's it for tonight. I wanted to drop in on Illinois. People have been clamoring for it for a while, and that's why we're here doing this one. Again, I'm using government gold maps. sourdoughminer.com GGM is the tool. Not so much the tool as the training for the tool. The tool is out there free. It's MRDS, but what this shows you is how I use the tool and what we're looking for. So, that's the real thing we're doing here, and it's, like I said, it's cheap. So give it a look. See if you're interested. Check it out. Good night, and good prospecting. Prospector Jess, over and out. Tomorrow night. Catch you then.